Meet Adonijah, the son of King David, who dared to challenge the throne of Israel. With his charismatic charm and royal ambition, Adonijah seemed destined for greatness, but his actions would ultimately lead to his downfall. What drove Adonijah to rebel against his own father and brother? And what can we learn from his tragic story of pride and betrayal? Join us as we explore the fascinating story of Adonijah and discover the valuable lessons that can be applied to our own lives. From the dangers of pride and ambition to the importance of humility and loyalty, Adonijah's story is a powerful reminder of the consequences of our choices and the sovereignty of God. Subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking videos on the Bible, and share this video with your friends and family to spark important conversations about faith, family, and the power of humility. Let's dive into the captivating story of Adonijah together. Solomon was prophesied as the next king of Israel, and David planned for him to take the throne. However, Adonijah made an ill-fated attempt to become king at the end of David's life. Adonijah's attempted coup is documented in 1 Kings 1 verses 5 to 53. The passage states this happened when King David was advanced in years, and he could no longer keep himself warm despite using many blankets. The biblical account suggests that Adonijah took advantage of his father's state. He began pursuing the throne while David was still alive, but unable to govern effectively. Adonijah organized a public coronation ceremony at Enrogel, just outside Jerusalem. The Bible suggests that while David had designated Solomon as his successor, his choice was not yet public knowledge. Adonijah was a charismatic and handsome figure who easily gathered supporters. He secured support from influential figures such as Army Commander Joab and High Priest Abiathar. Their involvement in Adonijah's scheme made his claim seem legitimate. While time proved that David was not as ineffectual as Adonijah thought, Joab and others saw a power vacuum. David hadn't made his successor clear yet. Enemy nations might try and take advantage. They may have had good intentions and hoped to secure Israel's future. However, they may not have been altruistic. They likely saw Adonijah as a king they could manipulate. Joab had quite a history of violent betrayal and intrigue. He had killed Absalom against David's wishes. So, what happened when Adonijah tried to become king? Initially, King David was unaware of Adonijah's actions. Fortunately for him, the prophet Nathan and Solomon's mother Bathsheba saw the urgency and threat to Solomon's future when Adonijah declared he was king. They both knew something was wrong. They knew firsthand the prophecy that Solomon would become the next king. Nathan and Bathsheba approached David about Adonijah's actions and reminded him of his promise to make Solomon his successor. David acted swiftly when he learned Adonijah's attempt to seize the throne. He confirmed his earlier promise and publicly declared Solomon as his successor. Supporters, including Nathan, the famous priest Zadok, and the mighty man Benaiah, declared Solomon was king. They anointed Solomon at the Gihon spring and led the new king into Jerusalem. A great celebration followed Solomon's anointing, and the Israelites rejoiced at Solomon succeeding the throne. After Solomon's anointing, Adonijah and his supporters, including Joab and Abiathar, realized their plan had failed. Adonijah sought refuge at the altar, where no one would touch him for fear of touching a holy object. However, Solomon showed mercy to his brother, and his life was spared. With the succession issue resolved, David reorganized his kingdom. He made arrangements for Solomon's official enthronement as king. He instructed Solomon on various matters related to the kingdom's administration and governance. Adonijah's behavior highlights how complex power and succession can become, especially for a kingdom. Unfortunately, Adonijah's story didn't end with his attempt to become king. Later, after David's death, Adonijah came to Bathsheba, not Solomon, and asked to marry Abishag. Bathsheba passed on the request to Solomon. Solomon realized more was going on in the request. Adonijah's request to marry Abishag was a strategic political move. Abishag had attended to David in his final days, sharing his bed to give body heat, though apparently never as his concubine. In ancient royal courts, taking any woman associated with the former king could imply he was taking the former king's place. By seeking to marry Abishag, Adonijah was effectively signaling he still wanted to take the throne. Solomon perceived Adonijah's request as challenging his authority, something certain factions would see as weakening him. Solomon was young. He was not David. Adonijah now had a wife that many people perceived as David's concubine. The tribes of Israel were easily swayed. As he knew from Absalom's popular coup attempt, David instructed Solomon to establish his reign. After executing Joab, Solomon ordered the execution of Adonijah. By ordering Adonijah's execution, Solomon clearly stated his authority. There was no room for challenges or rival claims to the throne. His actions conveyed a message of uncompromising strength and the preservation of the dynasty established by God. The Bible clarifies how God played a role in selecting kings. While the messianic prophecies didn't become overt until years later under prophets like Isaiah, God was already maintaining his line of David to bring Jesus to the earth as King of Kings. Solomon may not have been aware of any messianic plan, but he knew God's will, thanks to David, Nathan, and Bathsheba. Solomon was the divinely appointed ruler over Israel. Solomon needed to eliminate any potential threats to his rule to preserve this divine plan. So, what can we learn from Adonijah's story? Adonijah's fascinating, tragic story is filled with intrigue and interesting characters. As with much of the biblical narrative, definitely in the Old Testament, these people's stories don't indicate we should always model our lives on their choices. We shouldn't seek to kill others for positions like Solomon. At the same time, Solomon did show his brother grace despite the fact the attempted coup could have led to another civil war. David showed resolve for God's will and kept his word, making Solomon the new king. Today, we benefit from hindsight and greater revelation, seeing God at work within the intrigue and violence to save a lineage to bring his son to the world. That is the king we worship, and no one takes his throne from him either.